Yeah, and there's a lot of scams like that now where, you get told that you've committed to something, and if you don't pay for what you've committed to, without the sort of voice signature part of it, those scams kind of exist already. So, I mean, the whole thing relies on people eventually giving in to the scammers' weight of argument. But people who know New Zealand well will know we have good consumer protection laws, and you can't just ring someone up and trick them into a contract. And so they should feel comfortable just telling them to
cease and desist, Martin. Thank you, Martin Cocker from NetSafe. On the panel, did Warren Beatty throw Faye Dunaway under the bus at the Oscars? Here we go.
And the Academy Award for Best Picture.
You're impossible. Come on. La La Land.
Do you have to ask why he didn't twig when he saw Emma Stone's name at the top of the card?
I don't know. He's standing in front of a room full of his peers, and there are 100 million people watching him. And he's an actor who just, I don't mean an actor just reads lines, but their job is to read the script.
Go on, say it truthfully.
Their job is to read the script. And I looked at it and looked like he was showing it to Faye going, oh, crikey, you have a look and see if you can confirm my worst nightmare. And she just sees La La Land and goes for it.
And I suppose getting the envelopes wrong is one thing, but what about allowing the La La Land producers to start in on their... I mean, do you understand the paralysis that seemed to accompany this?
I think they were so shocked and horrified at the whole thing. But the star of the show was that guy who raced forward and said, look, no, you didn't win. It was Moonlight. This is not a joke. Holds it up to the screen. He took charge.
Jordan Horowitz, who was the producer of La La Land. It was a gracious, beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And then later on, one of the people from Moonlight said that they were so proud to share the stage with La La Land and, all of those things. So there was some grace in it.
Yes.
It was still a major
It was, wasn't
mistake.
it?
It's interesting that PwC is under such tight scrutiny about this and not over the global financial crisis.
Do you think they'll be drug testing their envelope bearers from now on?
I think they have to, don't they?
I think they might have to.
Apparently, I'm surprised this hasn't happened before because they have the identical cards on both sides of the stage because they could enter from either side. So the fact that this has never happened before is beyond belief. So what happened was that our friend Walter got handed the wrong one, Warren, that because it hadn't been taken off the pile. I mean, what an anachronistic way of doing it.
Wouldn't you, if you were the card hander, envelope hander, have a quick look at the
It's the
front
last one of the night.
Exactly.
You're already planning how to get to the after party. How could things go so badly wrong? You're exhausted. You've been handing out envelopes to people all evening and running around like a crazy thing.
And you're a PwC person after all.
Yeah.
Lovely to have both of you on today on the last day of summer.
It is.
Oh,
Bummer of a summer.
Was the first day like Saturday?
It was this morning.
Oh, right, gotcha. Yeah, wow.
New Zealand's fabulous 4-day summer.
Yeah.
Do you want to move summer as Peter Dunn wants or not?
Yeah, I'd really like to. Yeah, that end of year plus Christmas plus end of school plus get ready for the holiday thing kills me.
Okay.
Split it up.
Yeah, I'd like to move summer to Italy.
Yes.
Sandy Hodge, thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Ackcourt, always a great pleasure.
Thank you.
And we're back tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
Kia ora everyone. Tonight on Checkpoint we have the latest from Harwood's Hole in the Abel Tasman National Park where a rescue operation is underway with at least one caver injured and others possibly stranded down a 176 metre sinkhole. Anecdotage is one thing, but how many people do actually fail workplace drug tests? We reveal some numbers. Police have released CCTV footage showing a vehicle entering and leaving a Riverhead quarry where a young woman was attacked at the weekend. This was after the Pride Parade, of course. This broke yesterday. And is the Washdyke Lagoon swimmable or not? All of that and much more coming up after the news at 5 o'clock. The Pips first.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Good afternoon, I'm Anna Thomas. Government figures show beneficiaries have failed only 466 pre-employment drug tests in the past 3 years. Tens of thousands of beneficiaries are tested each year. The Prime Minister, Bill English, said yesterday he hears from employers 2 or 3 times a week that they're struggling to find enough New Zealanders to fill job vacancies, in many cases because they fail the drug test. The Drug Foundation's Executive Director Ross Bell says Mr English is being irresponsible and scapegoating young New Zealanders.
And in this case, we're picking young New Zealanders who are sitting on their couch high all the time, lazy stoners. And I actually think that that's a message that might appeal to some people. It's not a message that is true, and I think it's dangerous ground for a Prime Minister to be on.
Ross Bell says it's dog whistle politics in an election year. The Minister for Women says the pay gap between working mothers and fathers is simply unacceptable. A new report produced by the Department of Statistics and the Ministry of Women shows a gap of 17%, compared with 5% for those who are not parents. Paula Bennett says employers should seriously consider the pay they're offering working mothers.
My call out right now is to every employer, you don't pay them what you think you can get away with. Don't even pay her what you think she'll accept. Pay her what she's worth. And if she's worth something to your business or organisation and she's productive, then why on earth should that be less than a man?
And the Minister for Women, Paula Bennett. New figures reveal the government spent $81,000 throwing a party in Washington to celebrate the inauguration of President Donald Trump. The gala, hosted by the Ambassador Tim Grosser in January, was attended by more than 320 people, including US government figures, business people and celebrities. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the funding came from its baseline budget and met standard approval criteria, describing the party as, quote, constituency building activity. The ministry says it was critical in advancing the country's interests in the US. A team of 4 cave rescue specialists is going into a deep caving system where a person has fallen and injured their arm. The police say it's likely to take between 1 and 2 hours to reach the person at Harwood's Hole inside Takaka Hill. Acting Senior Sergeant Brett Curry of the Nelson Police has told an RNZ News reporter at the scene there are 6 cavers in a group. He says 2 are safely down the hole, but 1 is halfway down with significant hand and arm injuries. A man tried to grab an 11-year-old girl on her way to school in Auckland today. The police say he followed her for about 200 metres on St Heliers Bay Road between 8 and 20 past this morning. Sally Murphy reports.
Detective Inspector Scott Beard says the man grabbed the girl as she got to the school, but she broke free and ran and told her teacher, who called the police. She was shaken but uninjured. The man is described as being in his 40s, tall, of solid build, with a cut on the top of one of his wrists and a pierced right eyebrow. He was wearing a short-sleeved blue top and black pants. Mr Beard says the police are obtaining available CCTV footage and will carry out extra patrols around the school for the rest of the week. This is Sally Murphy.
A Court of Appeal has delivered a stinging rebuke to the Civil Aviation Authority over its handling of the proposed runway extension at Wellington Airport. The airport wants to extend the runway 355 metres to the south, including a 90-metre safety area at the end. Catherine Hutton reports.
The court has directed the CAA to consider whether the safety area should be 240 metres. It says the authority failed to make its own assessment and simply decided the cost wasn't justified. The pilots' union, which brought the case, says the original decision was based on the feasibility of building the runway rather than any cost-benefit analysis. Wellington Airport says extending the runway even further will be challenging, and it's not ruling out an appeal. The CAA says it appreciates the court's clarification of this technical issue and will reconsider its decision. This is Catherine Hutton.
It's 5:04. To sport, and opener Martin Guptill is back in the Black Caps fold, raising expectations. His presence will go a long way towards helping New Zealand keep the one-day series against South Africa alive. Guptill missed the first 3 one-dayers with a hamstring injury, and the Black Caps are 2-1 down in the 5-match series. However, it's a month since he last played, and he concedes it feels a little odd rejoining the side.
Does feel like a while since I've been with the team, but hopefully just fit straight back in, and sort of nothing sort of changed. It's exciting, 2-1 down in the series with two games to win, so it can't get much better than that, can it?
Martin Guptill. The threat of a season-ending suspension hanging over 3 Wellington Phoenix players has been lifted. Midfielder Roli Mbanavacia and defenders Tom Doyle and Ryan Lowry were suspended indefinitely last week for breaching team standards. However, coach Des Buckingham says the trio can play in this weekend's game against Perth in Auckland. He says they have apologised to their teammates, though he still won't say what they did wrong. Olga Korbut, the gymnastics darling of the 1972 Munich Olympics, who has apparently fallen on hard times, has sold off her games medals and other trophies. 32 lots, including 2 golds and a silver from the Munich Games, fetched $465,000 at auction in Arizona. And that's the news.
Finding workers.
Drug testing is a requirement, and yes, many individuals are rejected. And there's a secondary problem, which the Prime Minister probably didn't mention, is that the number of people who don't actually even present for a job because they know they're not going to pass.
Failing regions.
There are such a thing as ghost town.
And nabbing an Oscar.
The result was happy, although the snafu made it a little disconcerting.
Picking the winners, Guy and Aspinall and Susie Ferguson, Morning Reports, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, new research on why some of our glaciers bucked the trend of retreat. And after 10, Philip Hook from Sotheby's Auction House spills the beans on the tactics and the secrets of the people who sell us art. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Now the Met Service forecast to midnight tomorrow. Northland mainly fine. Isolated showers tomorrow. Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula fine spells. Isolated showers today, but a few more tomorrow. Showers possibly heavy with thunderstorms south of Manukau Harbour in the afternoons. Waikato to Taumaranui, including Bay of Plenty, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Taihape. Scattered afternoon and evening showers, mainly inland, where some will be heavy and thundery, clearing tonight but returning tomorrow afternoon. For the remainder of the North Island, from Taranaki to Wellington, also Wairarapa, mainly fine. Isolated afternoon showers about the ranges, clearing tonight. Areas of morning cloud tomorrow, then fine. For Nelson and inland Marlborough, mainly fine. Isolated showers about the ranges today. And for the remainder of the South Island, mainly fine weather, but areas of cloud or fog, mainly morning and evening. Isolated showers about the ranges today, and a few showers across Fiordland and coastal Southland tomorrow. And for the Chatham Islands, often cloudy. It's 8 minutes past 5. You're listening to Checkpoint with John Campbell.
Thank you very much, Anna Thomas. Appreciate it. Coming up, Bill English, anecdote and numbers. How do they compare? Benedict Collins has some actual facts. He'll join us shortly. A lagoon that clearly isn't swimmable, but new standards that seem to suggest it is. We visit it and we speak to Nick Smith and Donald Trump increasing military spending and making some big cuts elsewhere to pay for it. All of that on Checkpoint tonight and much more. But we begin in the Abel Tasman National Park, where a rescue operation is underway at Harwood's Hole. A caver has suffered serious injuries abseiling down the deepest vertical shaft in the country. A team of 4 cave rescue specialists has entered the 176-metre deep sinkhole to reach the injured caver. In a moment, we'll speak to our reporter Tracy Neal, who is there. But first, let's hear from Nelson Police Acting Senior Sergeant Brent Curry.
Our situation at the moment is we have a party of 6 climbers who've gone down to the hole. 2 climbers have made it to the bottom of the hole safely, and a 3rd climber is partway down the hole towards the bottom, but injured with significant arm and hand injuries. The process from here on is that we will get specialised cave rescue team up to the hole. They'll be being brought up by the Wellington Westpac Rescue helicopter. Once they arrive, we'll develop a plan to get them down to the hole, set up their equipment and get a paramedic down to the injured party.
Nelson Police Acting Senior Sergeant Brent Curry, who was speaking just a few minutes ago. Let's go now live via Live View to our reporter Tracy Neal, who is beaming in from the scene. Hi Tracy, any sign of the Westpac rescue chopper?
Hi John. Well actually I'm just in the last few minutes it's just flown over my head to the scene. I'm standing on top of the Takaka Hill at this point, some kilometres actually from the scene itself. I've had to come out this far to get coverage to transmit and broadcast to you. So they are in a very remote part in the hinterland of the Abel Tasman National Park.
Yes, it's a famous cave system that they have entered. Have police released any more information on who these cavers are? Were they experienced, for example? Does anyone know?
Well, I think, John, we can assume that anybody attempting this area is experienced. It's certainly not an area for the faint-hearted. Even walking around this particular area of the Takaka Hill is treacherous in terms of the landscape that it is, with all these tomos and sinkholes. And they haven't released any more details at this stage, but we understand that the helicopter has just flown the specialist rescue party in and the paramedics. And the aim is that within the next couple of hours they will attempt to reach this injured climber and get him out.
Yeah, this is highly specialised work, isn't it? How remote is this exactly, Tracy? For people who don't know this area very well, where are you and where is this hole?
Okay, well, if you can, for anybody watching now, I'm standing on top of the Takaka Hill. The Abel Tasman National Park in Tasman Bay is behind me. To my left, in the hinterland of the Takaka Hill, is Canaan Downs. Of course, a lot of people might know where that is, the scene of various dance parties in the past. A beautiful part of the Takaka Hill, and Howard's Hole is just beyond that, so it's very deep within the folds of the Takaka Hill.
Tracy Neal live from, as she said, as close as she can get to the scene and still send us that picture. We will go back to police at the scene, and we're also speaking to one of the people who was involved in the rescue operation, and we will cross to them the moment they have anything to tell us. But at the moment, this is a highly specialised and difficult rescue operation, and it is unfolding. It's 12 minutes past 5. Thank you for being with us on Checkpoint. The Prime Minister has been accused of behaving irresponsibly by spreading what he's called anecdotes about New Zealanders not being able to fill local jobs because they can't pass required drug tests. This is off the back, of course, of yesterday's release of immigration figures showing another record high. Bill English said yesterday he hears from employers 2 or 3 times a week that they're struggling to find enough local workers to fill job vacancies, in many cases because the applicants fail drug tests. And today, when he was asked about his claims by reporters, Mr. English denied that he's scapegoating a few drug users to try to take attention off those immigration figures.
We're certainly not doing that. We're describing one factor among many that's been a hurdle for young people getting work. I mean, just go and ask the businesses in horticulture and forestry, a lot of factory work. I mean, they'll tell you about what the problems aren't and what they are. They're the employers, and they're making decisions about who they can employ, and so we set a bit of store by that.
Prime Minister, you've made those statements without any firm figures. It's just anecdotal evidence. You would accept that? You've got no firm figures whatsoever in saying that what you have.
Well, as I said yesterday, it was anecdotal evidence. If people are implying that somehow this doesn't happen, they should go and visit some workplaces. But the point here is that there is a pretty comprehensive support system in place. So if someone is unemployed in New Zealand, there's a number of schemes and opportunities, and for quite a few of them, personal support to help them get work.
Bill English talking a short time ago. So what are the facts here? Anecdotage is one thing. What do the numbers actually say? Our reporter Benedict Collins has been in pursuit of these numbers, and he's got some. And he's beaming in from Parliament now. Benedict, welcome. What do you know? What do the numbers say, and what are the numbers?
Yeah, right. So what I've done today is I've gone to the Ministry of Social Development and I've requested the numbers of basically job seekers who have been looking for jobs who have failed drug tests over the last 3 years. So what we've found out is that 466 beneficiaries have failed drug tests over the last 3 years. Now, what I can also tell you is that they carry out about 30,000 tests a year. So we're talking way less than, we're talking about sort of half of 1% here in terms of the failure rates. Very, very low.
Okay. So if you've had somewhere between 400 and 500 failures over the past 3 years and somewhere between 30,000 tests a year, what is Bill English talking about? And are these figures a direct contradiction of what he was saying yesterday and then again a short time ago?
Well, this is the government data that we hold, right? So, we're not finding out exactly what's going on in the private sector, but definitely the data that the government holds shows it's a very, very small problem. Very few. Hey, and also Ministry of Social Development, they've told us today, some of these beneficiaries represent more than one of the failed. They may have failed more than once here. So it doesn't mean that 466 individual people have failed. Some of those will be represented twice. So the numbers are just tiny when you think that over the last 3 years, roughly 90,000 people, beneficiaries, have been tested looking for work.
Right, can we clarify those numbers? So roughly 90,000 beneficiaries we're talking about here have been tested. There have been a total of 466 failures, but they may include multiple failures by the same person.
That's right. Hey, I've had a chat with the Drug Foundation today, and they've said, hey, they just think the Prime Minister's been so irresponsible here. He's saying, I've got these anecdotes, that Kiwi businesses are finding it hard to employ Kiwis because they're failing all the tests. He says, he's trying to paint young people as, stoners sitting on the couch, not able to work, and yet at the same time the government holds data that shows, it's almost not a problem whatsoever.
Our political reporter Benedict Collins joining us live from Parliament with some actual numbers. Thank you, Benedict. 5:16. Police have released CCTV footage showing a vehicle seen entering and leaving a Riverhead quarry where a young woman was attacked at the weekend. Actually, I should remind you too, if you want to see these pictures, we are live streaming on YouTube. We're on Freeview Channel 50, and of course we're live on Facebook where you can watch us now, because we're going to put these pictures up. If you're listening but you want to see either the man that is being described or the vehicle, they will be on our website. Now, the woman told police she had earlier attended the Pride Parade in Ponsonby with friends. She has no memory of meeting the man after that, and she woke up at the quarry hours later to find him standing over her with a bat. She'd suffered injuries to her head and her face, and she had a broken thumb. Who was the man? Who was the vehicle? Detective Senior Sergeant Kim Libby is leading the investigation into the abduction, and I asked him to tell me about the CCTV footage.
That vehicle seen arriving at 1:45 a.m. on Sunday morning, and then it's seen leaving that area at 2:01 a.m, so 16 minutes later it leaves that immediate scene.
And what has happened in the interim? Did an attack take place there as far as you know, or had it already taken place?
Well, the concerning part, John, is that this young lady does not remember anything from Ponsonby Road to when she comes to in that yard, what we call a quarry, being quite severely been assaulted by some person she doesn't know.
So she came to during the assault in this quarry?
Yes, that's correct.
And when her assailant left, was she conscious? Did he think he'd left her for dead? Do you know any of these details?
Well, we're still formally interviewing that young lady as we speak. It would appear that she's come to and she's yelled at him and managed to grab some clothing and escaped, as in run away. And she's managed to run away and hide from that person.
Obviously, as part of your interview process, you're also doing blood tests and trying to ascertain whether she had been drugged or stupefied in any way. Do you have those results back yet?
No, they always take some time, but those samples were taken immediately on the day when she was receiving medical attention. So we've done a forensic medical to assess that, what may have been given to her.
And clearly, you may not want to discuss this, and we absolutely understand that. But was there a sexual attack as part of this ongoing assault?
We're unsure. That's what forensic examination will tell us as well. Obviously there's a sinister element. This girl's been a memory lapse of almost 3 hours, so I mean that's a major part of our investigation that we want to establish, if we can, what has happened.
So this is a concerted, long-lasting and highly unusual assault, and the man is still at large. That is a very striking picture that you have released from the CCTV cameras at the mobile service station in Ponsonby. Surely if you knew this man you would recognise him from that picture.
Exactly, and we have had a number of nominations received, especially today, since his that photo went out, and that's plus the CCTV of that vehicle. So as I said yesterday, he's the last person seen with her. That man hasn't come forward to us. However, we still want to speak to him. He may be innocent, but there's also sinister that he may be the offender. And if anyone knows someone who looks like that and may have access to a car like that, which we think is something similar to a 2008 Ford Mondeo, may not be that exact car, but something similar to that, we want that person or nomination to be made to our police line.
So you have a good description of the man, in fact a good photo of him, and it is online for people who want to see it. We're also putting it up as we play this interview. And you have a good description of the car, 2008 Ford Mondeo or similar vehicle. What colour?
It looks, but bearing in mind it's CCTV at night, but it looks like it's a silver with alloy wheels.
Okay, so you really want people to contact you because somebody must know who this man is.
Exactly, we want to catch him sooner than later, and we need to find him ASAP, and obviously if someone sees that picture they must know him if they know him.
DSS Libby, can I just clarify one thing? In the picture it's tightly cropped. Is the woman, is his victim, or alleged victim, because we're not absolutely certain it's him, walking beside him in that picture? Have you, for obvious reasons, cropped her out?
Yes, we've cropped her out. She's right beside him at that stage.
Right, so they are clearly and explicitly together, and that is the last person she has been seen with?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so in fact, in normal circumstances, you might have expected to have heard from the man by now if he had nothing to do with this?
Well, yeah, obviously we would expect that. Maybe he's scared off, but at some stage we're going to identify that man and he should come forward now.
DSS Kim Libby, who's in charge of the investigation, and obviously police are desperate to hear from anyone who knows the identity of that man who was the last person seen with the victim of this assault. The time on Checkpoint is 22 minutes past 5. Coming up on the program, we're going to head to Timaru, or just outside it is the Washdyke Lagoon Swimmable. Under new standards, the government is introducing those new targets. The locals say no way. What do the standards say? What does the minister say? We talked to Nick Smith. And the situation vacant advertisement that has a lot of people talking. Applicants need to wear proper pants, pulled up, wear their caps round the right way and put their phones away. We will talk to the man who put that ad in the newspaper before 6. We'd love to hear from you in any way you choose. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. We are, of course, on Facebook. In fact, you can watch us on Facebook, and our email address is checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. If, by the way, you know that Washdyke Lagoon, and if a long time ago you used to swim in it, we would love to hear from you. Right, the couple who discovered a woman who had allegedly been kidnapped and left for dead on a rural road north of Auckland has told a court about her horrific injuries. Nicola Jones, Cameron Hakeke, Michelle Bloom and Julianne Torrance are on trial in the High Court in Auckland, facing charges of kidnapping, assaults using a taser and scissors, and robbery over the incident last May. Ms Jones and Ms Blom have also been charged with sexual violation and attempted murder, while Wayne Blackett has admitted charges of attempted murder and assault. Our reporter Sarah Robson has been in court.
Kathleen Tolman and her partner, Stephen Piggott, live up a metal road in the Dome Valley, just off State Highway 1. Giving evidence in court today, Ms Tolman described the moment she discovered the woman lying on the road as she was driving to work.
I didn't know at first what it was because a lot of people dump rubbish and things in that part of the road, and I just thought someone might have just dumped something there, but when I flicked my headlights on, I saw the person move, the leg moved.
Kathleen Tolman said she stopped her car in the middle of the road. With her lights on, she could see the woman lying on her side. Ms. Tolman said she was frightened and turned back down the road to find her partner. They called 111 and went back to the woman. Under questioning from the Crown Prosecutor, Brian Dickey, Ms. Tolman said there was blood on the road and the woman had awful injuries.
There was a really bad head injury, and her arm was twisted around, and just she had cable ties on her wrist and her legs, her ankles.
Kathleen Tolman said she tried talking to the woman, but she was unresponsive.
I kept talking to her. I kept saying, we're here to help, and help's on its way, and you'll be okay, we're going to help you, but there was no response at all.
Kathleen Tolman's partner, Stephen Piggott, also told the court about the woman's injuries.
As we looked at it, could just see the horrific injuries on her head. It was bleeding, the blood, and...
Could you tell what those injuries were?
We couldn't tell. Well, it's just the head had, there's all blood, and it looked like it was cracked.
Judith Wilson was one of the first ambulance officers on the scene. She said the woman was unresponsive and she could only find a faint pulse.
I could see that there was an injury, obviously, on the cuts on her head and the blood. I ran my fingers through her hair to see if there was any other injuries on her head, and I noticed a hole on the top of her head, like a wound, more of an open wound.
The Crown expects to call 60 witnesses during the 4-week trial. From the High Court in Auckland for Checkpoint, Coursera Robson, Aho.
It's 26.5 minutes past 5. We've got some very sad news that we're going to bring to you now. Former Silver Fern netballer Tanya Dalton, her family have just released a statement saying her life support has been turned off. She collapsed after suffering an aneurysm 5 days ago while playing touch rugby in Auckland. No impact involved, just a terrible thing that happened. A statement from her family say life support was switched off just at about 1:30 this afternoon. Her family is by her side at Auckland Hospital, with Tanya Dalton described as being peaceful. Test results show the aneurysm caused massive blood loss, leading to a loss of oxygen to the brain for an extended period. The statement said the damage was irreversible, and so the family is now allowing nature to take its course. Tanya Dalton was a redoubtable Silver Fern. From memory, she played for the team for the best part of a decade, from the mid-90s to the mid-2000s, a career that was quite remarkable because she returned from serious injury a couple of times. Highly admired player, a loved human being, a mother of 3, I think, and her family are with her now. Her life support has been switched off. Former Silver Fern Tanya Dalton. It's coming up to 28 minutes past 5. Let's go to Waikato Hospital now, and a really courageous man named Basil Lloyd, or as he prefers, Baz. Baz's wife died 8 years ago, and last year he decided to sell his home, buy a caravan and travel around New Zealand. Obviously a caravan is a lot cheaper than a house, but instead of keeping the spare money, Baz gave it away, the biggest portion to his late wife's friends, so they could buy a home of their own. And giving most of it away, Baz, who's 65 and on a pension, couldn't afford insurance for his caravan. He thought he'd be fine, but just over 2 weeks ago he was in Taupō installing a new fridge and messed up disconnecting and reconnecting the gas bottle. Baz told our reporter Zach Fleming it all started when he went to cook a steak for dinner.
Went to put the pan back down on the gas stove, and next minute there was this almighty boom. I could look over and see the bed was on fire and things like that. I was like, holy moly. I looked around and I've got to get out of here, you know. There was a lady in a camper right next door to me. She heard it all and she come out and all she could see was flame.
And you were all right? Like you were running around?
I was still standing.
Yeah.
I was walking around. So we used three fire extinguishers and we still couldn't put the fire out.
How big was it at this point?
It was starting to blaze, you know, because the mattress had caught fire. I managed to, because the side of the motorhome had blown out, I managed to pull the mattress out of the motorhome, threw that on the ground, but the fire was still getting worse and we had no water. So I thought, oh man, I can't leave I can't leave the motorhome sitting there burning because it was just going to burn. You know, these other motorhomes around me, and
so you were worried it might blow up?
Well, it may, yeah. I thought, I don't know what would happen, but it may have spread to these other motorhomes and other people and stuff like that. I don't, so I thought, I've got to move it. So I went, then this other guy was around there and he saw me opening the door and he came up to me, he says, "You can't move this, the whole blooming thing will blow up." I said, "No, I've got to get it out of the way so no one else gets hurt, you know." And only me, I said, "I'm already hurt, I'm already burnt." So I drove it about, I knew where there was a nice clear, short cropped grassed area. I drove it around this little road, and about 100 metres I suppose, and parked it up there, and I knew where there was a garden hose. And I went over there, and sure enough this garden hose was sitting there. So I pulled it on, I because my shirt and that was on fire, and so I put me out. I was still on fire when I was inside driving.
So you're probably still in quite a bit of shock, eh?
Oh, most probably, yeah. But I just wanted to get out of harm's way, out of other people's harm. But things are healing quite well, really. Even the nurses they said for the type of, the big burns I had, I've healed up quite well. And they've seen it all.
Some people would say it's pretty courageous of you to get in that caravan when you're still burning and drive it away.
I don't call it courage. I just didn't want anyone else to get hurt.
Isn't that the meaning of courage, though?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just the ordinary Kiwi bloke who likes to look after people and property and stuff like that. So, no, I don't know. I don't call it courage. I just call it just what I'm made of.
When you get out of here, hopefully at the end of the week, where are you going to go?
I've got a friend down in Wanganui who's offered to put me up for 2 or 3 weeks, and then after that it's just a matter of trying to get my motorhome going, because I live in it permanently. That is my home. I've only been to Christchurch, and that was way back in 1980. I went down from Taupo to watch France play the All Blacks in the first test way back then. And that's the only time I've been in the South Island. So I plan to go, that's my plan anyway, to go right round the South Island and have a good look. And what better to do it in than a motorhome?
That is Basil Lloyd, or Baz, talking to our reporter Zach Fleming in Waikato Hospital. It was filmed by Brad White. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ. Thank you for being with us. Coming up, we'll go back to Nelson, or near Nelson actually, Takaka, Abel Tasman, for the latest on the rescue operation at Harwood's Hole, where a caver has suffered significant injuries. This is a very particular and difficult rescue operation, and it's unfolding as we speak. Nick Smith on water quality. And we go to Washdyke near Timaru to look at it would be classified as swimmable in general terms under the new targets. Is it? Last night we spoke with Oscar winner John Gilbert just after he'd won. He was delighted, of course. Tonight, Dan Lemon from Weta Digital in Wellington, who was another winner last night, visual effects work in The Jungle Book, which was shot entirely against a blue screen. Visual effects made that movie. He'll join us. But before all of that, Anna Thomas with the headlines.
Good afternoon. A team of 4 rescue specialists has reached a caver injured in a fall at Harwood's Hole inside Takaka Hill. The caver has significant arm and hand injuries, but a police spokesperson says they are not believed to be life-threatening. The person, one of a party of 6, is partway down the hole towards the bottom. The spokesperson says the team is assessing the best way to extract the person from the caving system to a waiting rescue helicopter. The life support for former Silver Fern Tanya Dalton has been turned off. Dalton collapsed after suffering an aneurysm 5 days ago while playing touch rugby in Auckland. Her family say life support was turned off just before 1:30 this afternoon. Government figures show beneficiaries have failed only 466 pre-employment drug tests in the past 3 years. Tens of thousands of beneficiaries are tested each year. The Prime Minister has said he hears from employers 2 or 3 times a week that they're struggling to find enough New Zealanders to fill vacancies, in many cases because they fail the drug test. A man has tried to grab an 11-year-old girl on her way to school in Auckland. The police say he followed her for about 200 metres on St Heliers Bay Road between 8 and 20 past this morning. The police have released CCTV footage showing a 2008 Ford Mondeo or similar car at a West Auckland quarry where a young woman was attacked at the weekend. They also want to speak to a man on a video at a Ponsonby service station who was the last person to be seen with the victim. Detective Senior Sergeant Kim Libby told Checkpoint they want to catch the attacker sooner rather than later. Those are the headlines. Next news and weather at 6.
Lots of lovely reaction to Baz already. Laurie Fleming says on Twitter, what a great chap Baz is, and a hero. And Moana Maniapoto, Kia ora Moana, says, what a hard case fella he is. Lovely interview with Baz just before the headlines. Lots coming up, including Nick Smith, but let's turn to business news now with Giles Beckford. And business confidence has taken a dip. Giles, our business editor, amid signs the economy is levelling out.
Yes, it's the first serious look at the economic sentiment this year, John, from the ANZ Bank. They do monthly surveys. They're pretty good indicators of the way the economy is faring and the way firms are thinking about their own businesses and the broader picture. This one shows a 5 percentage point dip in the overall level of confidence, but firms are still pretty upbeat about their own prospects, which is always a good sign and a pretty good indicator that activity is bubbling along quite nicely. But there are a few signs. We couldn't expect that it could keep going at the breakneck speed it had been last year. People are finding it a little harder to get the right skilled staff. They're finding higher interest rates is starting to just cost them a little bit more. They're expecting higher inflation, and that will add to their costs. By the same token, they expect their profits will come down and they'll be investing less. So while we're not going at a gallop as we were last year, perhaps we're going at a canter, and just a wee bit of a reality check for this time of the year.
Yeah, speaking of reality checks, the company which runs Marsden Point, I see from your notes has had a sharp old slide in profit, has it, Giles?
They did indeed. This is New Zealand Refining. They run the Marsden Point refinery now. It's more a comment about the year before last, in fact, 2015, which they call a trophy year. This is when world oil prices were down at rock bottom lows. Their profit margins, their processing margins were sky high. They ripped in $151 million profit in 2015. That came down to $47 million or thereabouts last year. What I did like, we won't give you the dry numbers, what I did like about the result was a couple of little comments by the chief executive who said, when these big jumbos that are flying in non-stop from the Middle East land in Auckland and they're headed back to Qatar or Dubai, they need about 250,000 litres of avgas. That's all coming from Marsden Point. That is pumped direct from Marsden Point to Auckland Airport. It ties up that pipeline for 4 minutes to fill one plane going 17,000 Ks. So just bear that one in mind. And Sheard Post, who is the chief executive, he laughs at the prospect. I suppose he's not laughing too loudly, but he smirks at this all the talk of electric cars. He says we had 300,000 new vehicles last year. Most of them were SUVs. Thank you very much, he says. You're boosting the sales of the diesel that I make.
Right. The markets, Giles, how did they go today?
We've had a gangbuster day for our own top 50 index, gaining 79 points. That's about 1.2%, somewhere around 71.58 to close. The New Zealand dollar just sitting around that 72 US cents level and 93.5 Australian.
Giles Beckford, our business editor, live from Wellington. Thanks, Giles. As the dust or silt or swimmers settle on the government's announcement last week of its water standards targets, debate continues over its merits and its actual meaning and application. The government stands by it all. Farming groups say they can and will work with it, while environmental groups span a gamut from bewildered to somewhat underwhelmed. Fish and Game, for example, welcome the government's admission declining water standards are indeed a problem, but say the action is long overdue and will take too long to make a meaningful difference. That's Fish and Game. Meanwhile, the broad brushstrokes of national targets have left the odd waterway to spill through the cracks, like one coastal lake in South Canterbury. Now, while websites, etc. define it as anything but, Wash Dyke would be classified as swimmable under the new standards. And as you will see, and you can see behind me if you're watching, it certainly isn't. Our Christchurch reporter, Maya Burry, drove south.
This is about a kilometre south of Timaru. To the right of me, I have the lagoon. This is a coastal lagoon, so the beach is to my left. And behind this lagoon, it's an industrial area, so a number of factories. You can probably see some of them puffing out steam and smoke. And in front of me is the freeze works. So this is quite an industrial area, but I'm told it wasn't always like this. I spoke to a local in Timaru who said he used to come and play here, and people did actually used to swim here. So he was, quite surprised to learn that it's considered swimmable now, because when you look at it, it doesn't look too good. The water looks very murky and brown, a lot of kind of green algae hanging around the edges of the lagoon here. But there are quite a lot of birds, in the area as well. And I think part of the problem is the birds. They bring up the E. coli levels in the lagoon.
So you have spoken to people there about whether they would swim in it. Now, I have the advantage that I can see the shot you're talking to us from, and frankly, it looks about as appetising. I can't even think of an analogy, actually. It looks so unappetizing as a swimming prospect. But you've asked locals if they would swim in this lagoon, which is rated swimmable.
That's right, John. And I think what just speaks to how many people don't want to swim in this lagoon is the fact that there's no one here. This is like a desert land in the middle of nowhere with an oasis of water, but it doesn't really look like an oasis. It looks apocalyptic. And so speaking to locals in Timaru today, they said they were very, very surprised to learn that this was now considered a swimmable waterway.
Really? Yeah, I would be surprised that it was swimmable. Really surprised. Why Washdyke?
Would you take your pet there?
No. I don't think I'd take it in any waterways around here. The rivers are terrible.
Well, they've just changed the standards to suit themselves to say that it's now swimmable, when beforehand the old standards it wasn't.
No, it's definitely not somewhere you think of going for a swim, that's for sure.
Well, for those that would like to swim, they're welcome.
Look, as kids we grew up on Washdyke and we used to play down there, so people did swim in it. Nobody ever got sick. Who knows what it's like today?
Oh no, I wouldn't even swim in the river, mate. And I go out there all the time, so I wouldn't even take my dog out there.
Yeah, I think a lot of ducks and swans and things swim in it. Good luck to them.
So that's what locals in Timaru had to say about the Washdyke Lagoon. Obviously they weren't convinced at all that this was a swimmable lagoon. And as you can see, there are a lot of birds around here, and Nick Smith has acknowledged previously in a lecture he gave last year at Lincoln University that the birds are the reason that the E. coli levels are so high and make this this lagoon rather unswimmable. But obviously it is now considered a swimmable lagoon, so I think a lot of locals are wondering what's changed here.
Maya Burry, what does the Environment Minister Nick Smith say about all of this? Well, in short, he says Washdyke is something of a freakish anomaly.
I think it's really important to go back to the bigger picture of how we have graded lakes and rivers around New Zealand relative to health. Because for our rivers, John, the big issue is E. coli. So if you're under health risk, we need to be really focused. And so that's why on the maps and the most comprehensive information that's ever been published on swimmability of our waterways, the 45,000 kilometres of rivers is all on the basis of E. coli.
Right.
Now, when it comes to lakes, the problem is with respect to toxic algae. And so we also have a grading all the way from excellent to good to fair to poor, and that is based on all the lakes on the basics of the level of algae. Now, if you take New Zealand's 800 lakes, and that involves 9,000 kilometres of lake margins, that's all recorded and reported, out of those 800, there is 3 in which have an E. coli problem. The other 2 are already in a poor category because of their levels of toxic algae.
Okay.
And so what you've done is out of 9,000 kilometres, you're focused in on 3 kilometres, and the site quite clearly puts a warning sign and says you shouldn't swim there because it's got elevated E. coli.
Okay, except what we're speaking to is a sense of confusion. I spoke to the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment last week, Jan Wright, who was confused. Forest and bird are confused. Fish and game are confused. Everyone is confused, and this is the universal and the particular. This is an example of it. And what makes it even more confusing is I have Environment Canterbury's report on Washdyke. There are tributaries that feed Washdyke. One of them, and I quote, brings in a considerable amount amount of stormwater. So you say it's birds. Actually, that tributary runs through farmland, semi-industrial, industrial, lifestyle blocks. And so, you know, isn't it smoke and mirrors or shit and mirrors or something?
No, this is the first time that we've ever published a consistent record of, for all our lakes and all our rivers across New Zealand, and that's 54,000 kilometres of them, consistent information on, for rivers, their E. coli levels, and for lakes, their toxic algae levels. Now, it's causing some really good debates, which I want and welcome if we are going to focus on doing it better. The problem to date is we've spent more time between town and country arguing, or farmers and industry and sewage and the sort of bird arguments. We've spent more time on that than cleaning them up because everybody's disputed the information.
Okay, let's try and drill down to what you're trying to achieve. There are 45,000 kilometres of rivers in New Zealand, right?
Yes.
What do you want them to look like by 2040?
Well, at the moment, there is 72% of them of which I would be comfortable in taking my kids and my family for a swim.
Right.
Without having to go look at some website, just with common sense.
Okay, so what do you want by 2040?
And by 2040, I want that to be 90%.
So if we take 90%, that still leaves what, 4,000 K of rivers in the 10%?
That's right. Actually, I can give you the exact number, about 5,200.
Right. So that's not a really high bar, is it? Because
Yes, it is.
What you and I know, wait a sec. No, hold on a sec. What you and I know is that those rivers, that 5,000 K, more or less, is disproportionately likely to be where people swim. It's disproportionately likely to be close to cities. It's disproportionately likely to be close to the coastline. In other words, you've got a whole lot of credit for rivers in the high country, for rivers in national parks that were never going to be polluted anyway.
No, but what this plan sets out is that over the next 23 years, we need to get 10,000 kilometres of river, or about 20%, out of the unswimmable category and into a place where I'd be comfortable to take my kids for a swim. And then the second thing is that we've got to take 26,000 kilometres and get them up a category, so that if you were in the good category, get it up to excellent. If you were in fair, get it into the good. Now, the water quality that if we achieve this plan in 2040 will be better at any time that we've had in New Zealand since World War II.
Compared to what I'm, because you keep saying World War II.
Yes,
what's the measure? You telling me?
Yeah. Because I tell you, that's a really good question. I'd love to explain
it. Yeah, because I keep hearing that and I keep thinking, what on earth is the measure? So you're talking about 1945. You're going to say that by 2040, rivers in New Zealand will be overall of a better quality than they were in 1945.
That's correct. I tell you what I base that on.
What's your measure?
What we've developed with the Ministry for the Environment is a model in which we put in different types of land use, different types of outlets involving pollutants going to our waterways.
So this is based on a model. Is it based on actual water readings from 1945?
But of course there wasn't readings done in 1945 to this level of accuracy. But what we are able to do is, because principally what has happened over the post-World War II period is that we have cleared substantial areas of country. We've created very large urban areas. Many of those have had substandard sewage systems. And so based on good quality scientific advice, you can go back and say, well, if the land use was like this, if there wasn't, 500,000 people living there, if there wasn't these levels of industrial activities, what would the water quality have been then? And that's where this plan's very ambitious, John.
Yeah, okay. Very ambitious and confusing. Do you think people understand this?
No, I totally accept that it is complex. And the easy choice, I remember the advice I got when I first became Environment Minister, and there's a lovely old guy who used to work in the Ministry for the Environment, and he said to me, Nick, the first thing, this water quality stuff, it's really complicated. Secondly, it takes a long time to get results. Thirdly, no matter what you do, you will be assigned the role of being the polluter because the soundbite of the opposition will always nail you. And my best advice to you is for you to do nothing and just blame the regional councils. Now, I didn't come to Parliament to be a minister to do nothing. I came to make a difference. This plan is going to make our waterways a lot cleaner, and that's why I'm proud of it.
Nick Smith, Environment Minister, 11 to 6. Let's go to the Oscars now. Best Picture, La La Land, wrong. And as everyone did a double take, the actual winners were rather lost in the chaos. Moonlight itself, whose win was What Lost Beneath the Manner of its announcement. Great film. Two New Zealanders had won earlier in the night. John Gilbert for editing. We spoke to John live backstage last night. He was so excited. And Dan Lemon from Weta Digital in Wellington for visual effects on The Jungle Book. What work that was. We spoke to Dan the morning after.
It's pretty surreal. It's pretty fantastic. It's it was my third trip to the Oscars, but the first win, and you sort of get used to not hearing your name called, and it's to actually hear them say your name out loud and be able to walk up on the stage and collect the award. It's an entirely different kind of experience.
How long does it take when they say your name for you to think, I've got to stand up and do this?
Less than a second. It's instantaneous. And it's something that's it's quite funny because I feel like every time we've been, we did good work, really really strong work, and you just never know exactly what the Academy is going to decide on the day. So it's you don't take anything for granted, and it's just a fantastic treat to be able to be up there.
I think that people don't understand the extent to which that was a visual effects movie, because it was almost in its entirety, in its totality, a blue screen film, right?
That's right. Yeah, it was pretty much the only thing real in the movie was the little kid. We would build these tiny little sets. They were like basically a strip. We called it a red carpet that the kid would walk down, Neil Sethi, and then we would fill in all the rest. So we were shooting in downtown Los Angeles, and we were, making it look like the jungles of Kipling's India.
And so every interaction, every tree, every river, swimming, none of it was happening.
That's right. I mean, often the thing that Mowgli would touch, that would often be in the plate, but certainly not if it was an animal, not if it was anything that was living, breathing. We'd build like a small piece of the temple that he was in. We'd build like one of the stone pillars, and we'd build the little bit that he was walking on. But often we'd have to go back and we'd have to replace that because we had to make it blend into all of the digital extension, the rest of the digital set that we'd build. And so it ended up being, I wouldn't say thrown away, but it was we would replace it with a version that kind of tied into the rest of the environment. So a whole lot of labor there. My team in New Zealand was probably about 400 people, all told, that worked on the movie for anywhere from a year and a half to a few weeks. And and then of course we our kind of compatriots at Motion Picture Company in London and India had another about 2,000 people. So it's it's an army of individuals to make a movie like that.
And Dan, you're visual effects supervisor, right?
That's right. I was one of probably 4 or 5 visual effects.
Right, and you have. Sorry, forgive me. This is just mind-boggling for those of us who don't understand blue screen. Well, I mean, we understand it theoretically, but not the extent, just how big it is. So you had 2,500 people working under you to make that film.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I had probably about 300 or 400 under me, and then we divide the work up amongst a few supervisors. So I was looking after all of Weta's work, and then there are a couple of companies involved who had their own supervisors, and it's we're really fortunate at Weta Digital in New Zealand to be able to have all our crew, in the same city. A lot of these, these other companies, they will, they'll have one office in London and one office in Bangalore and one office in Vancouver. And so the poor supervisors, they're up literally around the clock, reviewing shots and giving feedback to people all over the world. It's one of these cases where like the sun never sets on the companies.
So if you're working like that, and even with your team of 300 or 400 or whatever in Wellington, and it's being shot on a blue screen in LA, how do you know if it's working? When do you see if it's persuasive, if it's going to enable us to suspend our disbelief and truly be there? When do you know that?
It's funny. You take a leap of faith. A lot of times you go through the process a few times and you kind of know what to expect. But there is a moment, like you say, where suddenly it's like you've been looking at schematics and wireframes and the roughest representation of what's going to be in the movie. And then, one day you'll review, a piece of a work in progress, and it'll look like a shot. It'll look like a movie. And it's like, even for somebody that, that's done it thousands of times before, it's magic. It's like suddenly you are taken to, a place that doesn't exist. You believe that these characters that don't really exist feel and breathe and have you have empathy for them, and it's even as somebody that's done it all before, if you get sucked in, and if you get engaged in that way, it's gonna work for the audience.
Dan Lemon, who won an Oscar yesterday for visual effects, supervising visual effects on The Jungle Book, which was a total visual effects extravaganza. It's coming up to 5 minutes to 6. In fact, it is now. Lots and lots of feedback tonight. Thank you so much. And many people are asking, is there a Give a Little page for Baz? Yes, there is. Just go to Give a Little and search for Basil. Let's go to Waimati now in South Canterbury. We've been in South Canterbury a bit tonight, where Jeff Wallace needs someone to look after his bulls and work with potentially dangerous equipment unsupervised. So he placed the situations vacant ad that's been picked up by newspapers as far away as Australia, or as Jeff himself put it when he spoke to us, it's gone virusy. And that, in a way, is the point. Jeff isn't big on the internet, and he's not big on workers who are. He says bulls demand attention, constant attention, so he wrote an ad asking for applicants who can bear to put their phone down while they work and pull their jeans up and wear their caps around the right way. What he meant, we think, was someone who'll stay focused, pay attention and keep themselves and the bulls safe. We called Jeff, and once I'd assured him I wasn't applying, he seemed to relax a bit and he asked me how I was. Yeah, good, very good. What way's your cap facing, Jeff?
Well, I don't even wear one.
You don't? No. And look, I can't continue this conversation if your jeans aren't pulled up, Jeff. Are they up?
Yep, they're absolutely, totally up.
It's very important on Radio New Zealand. We say no to crack, Jeff.
Oh, that's good.
So what's this about? Have you been feeling a bit crabby? What's been going on?
Well, the guts of it is, I put an ad in the paper last year for an employee, and the people that turned up obviously were just turning up because the Labor Department demands that they turn up to every job interview that's local. But this job is an unsupervised job, so I just simply couldn't risk an unskilled person doing it,
You pay good money?
Well, I pay above average, I would expect.
Okay, let's talk about the jobs. You want a stock man or woman, right? This is a gender-neutral job, isn't it?
Absolutely correct. Yeah, as long as they're experienced, because we've got 2-year-old bulls, or we will have this coming winter, 2-year-old bulls undercover, and I need an experienced person that's capable of working equipment and feeding those bulls unsupervised.
And what are the bulls like? Do they behave themselves, or can they get a bit feisty?
Well, all bulls are feisty. You never trust them, but once they've been in the shed for a while, they become a lot tamer. I need people that aren't sloppy, because every machine that we own has got the capability of killing you, and I need people who are focused on the job, and not texting on the phone half the day. And so I don't know. My secretary, when I wrote that ad, she said, "You'll never get anyone to print that," and she was totally wrong. And she said it's gone virusy or viral or something, and I don't know what that means, but anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah. And so have you got someone?
Well, I've got a very good prospect that rang this morning, who's actually a bull farmer, and another chap who's been involved with feeding pigs, which are at the top of the list at the moment. Yeah.
Right, trousers up, caps around the right way.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'd even had a girl ring me this morning, and she assured me that she had that in that fashion.
And not on Facebook while the bull's charging at them.
I don't know about Facebook. I don't do those sort of things. I'm a bit on the busy side.
Jeff Wallace, I spoke to him yesterday. The story is going virusy. As he said, it's 1 minute to 6. Thank you for being with us tonight. Lots and lots of feedback about Bill English, and this is pretty representative. It's from Barbara Grace. Now we know that Bill English was mischief-making. Please ask him just who has been contacting him 2 or 3 times a week. That's with the anecdotes about drug tests. When did they start? And can he come up with some real figures about how many of these complaints he's had? This is signs of being the same sort of beat-up of beneficiaries that John Key was so adept at, e.g. when he said that homeless in cars had been visited and they didn't want help. Thank you for your persistence. Great work by Benedict Collins, our political reporter, trying to get actual figures as opposed to the anecdotes, and he did about 466 failed tests from about 90,000 tests conducted on beneficiaries over 3 years. It's coming up to 6 o'clock.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening, I'm Anna Thomas. The life support for former Silver Fern Tanya Dalton has been turned off. Dalton collapsed after suffering an aneurysm 5 days ago while playing touch rugby in Auckland. Her family say life support was turned off just before 1:30 this afternoon. The family are at her side in Auckland City Hospital and say she is peaceful. Test results showed the aneurysm caused massive blood loss, leading to a loss of oxygen to the brain for an extended period. The family say the damage is irreversible, so they're now allowing nature to take its course. A team of rescue specialists has reached a caver injured in a fall at Harwood's Hole inside Takaka Hill this afternoon. At more than 170 metres deep and 50 metres wide, the sinkhole is the largest in the Southern Hemisphere. Acting Senior Sergeant Brett Curry has told an RNZ News reporter at the scene that the person they're trying to rescue is one of a party of 6.
2 climbers have made it to the bottom of the hole safely, and a 3rd climber is partway down the hole towards the bottom, but injured with significant arm and hand injuries.
Brett Curry says the rescue team is assessing the best way of getting the caver out to a waiting helicopter. The Institute of Economic Research says getting disabled people into work could cut benefit costs by $300 million a year. In a new report, it also says that would boost tax revenue by $387 million a year. The New Access Alliance is calling for new accessibility laws to make finding a job easier for those with disabilities. The National Policy and Relationships Manager at Disabled Persons New Zealand, Esther Woodbury, says legislation would force employers to be inclusive.
For some people who just want to apply for a job that they're qualified for, that they have the experience for, they can't even necessarily apply for it online because the application process isn't accessible, or some people might go to a job interview and find that they actually can't get into the building, or that the place that they would be working doesn't have an accessible bathroom.
Esther Woodbury of Disabled Persons New Zealand. A forensic pathologist has told a court a woman who was kidnapped and left for dead on a rural road north of Auckland suffered many blows to her head. He says the injuries point to a hammer having been used. From the High Court in Auckland, Sarah Robson reports.
Nicola Jones and Michelle Blom are charged with sexual violation and attempted murder. Ms Jones, Ms Blom, Cameron Hakeke and Julianne Torrance also face charges including kidnapping, assault using a taser and scissors and robbery. Wayne Blackett has admitted charges of attempted murder and assault. Pathologist Simon Stables today showed the jury 3D reconstructions of CT scans of the victim's head. He said she suffered blows to 7 different parts of her head, and at least 2 of the fractures indicate she was hit in the same place more than once. Mr Stable said he has dealt with other cases where such injuries were fatal. Call Sarah Robson, Aho.
The police have released CCTV footage of a car entering and leaving a West Auckland quarry where a young woman was attacked at the weekend. The woman, who had been out in Ponsonby on Saturday night, told officers she woke up in the quarry at 2 a.m. to find a man standing over her with a bat in his hand. Footage shows a 2008 Ford Mondeo or similar going into the Riverhead quarry area next to a timber yard at 1:45 on Sunday morning and speeding ticking away at 2:01. Detective Senior Sergeant Kim Libby told Checkpoint that since releasing the footage, the police have had several tip-offs.
That man hasn't come forward to us. However, we still want to speak to him. He may be innocent, but there's also sinister that he may be the offender. And if anyone knows someone who looks like that and may have access to a car like that, we want that person or nomination to be made to our police line.
Kim Libby. The police have also released a photo of a man they wish to question. Police divers have recovered a body from the Marlborough Sounds. The police say an extensive search began on Saturday after a man diving off a boat near Stevens Island was reported overdue. Formal identification of the body is yet to take place. The body of Tonga's Queen Mother, Hale'evalu Mata'aho, has arrived home. Queen Mata'aho died in Auckland last weekend at the age of 90. A Royal New Zealand Air Force Hercules taking her home landed at Fuamotu this afternoon. She'll be laid to rest in the royal tombs of Male'ekula tomorrow, which has been declared a public holiday. It's 6:04. To sport, and veteran wing Manu Vatuve will miss the Warriors' first game of the National Rugby League season against the Newcastle Knights at Mount Smart Stadium on Sunday. Vatuve has been unable to return to full fitness in time since injuring his knee during a wrestling session earlier this month. Rookie standoff Mafo Iata Hingano will make his NRL debut in the halves alongside playmaker Sean Johnson. Fullback Roger Tuivasa-Sheck will captain the side in his first game back in the NRL in almost a year. The threat of a season-ending suspension hanging over 3 Wellington Phoenix players has been lifted. Midfielder Rolly Benavaccia and defenders Tom Doyle and Ryan Lowry were suspended indefinitely last week for breaching team standards. However, coach Des Buckingham says they can play in this weekend's game against Perth in Auckland.
They've apologised to the playing group. All 3 of them have applied themselves back to professional standards, if you like, and have got on with the job that they should be doing. So that, again, they've trained this morning, they've trained well. Again, we're in a stage of the season where we've got 6 games left and we need to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Des Buckingham still won't say what the 3 players did wrong. Roger Federer has breezed back into action to reach the second round of the Dubai Tennis Open with a straight sets win. It's his first outing since winning the Australian Open a month ago. And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Clint Buffington. He collects messages in bottles. So far he's found about 80 of them. This despite living in the landlocked US state of Utah. And guess like the bottles, he gets around. We have a window on the world of the singer Dalida. The French answer to Marianne Faithfull. While this week's pundit, our religious scholar Douglas Pratt, discusses matters of faith. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
And now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Wednesday. For Northland, mainly fine, isolated showers tomorrow. Auckland and the Coromandel Peninsula, fine spells, isolated showers today, but a few more tomorrow. Showers possibly heavy with thunderstorms south of Manukau Harbour in the afternoons. Waikato to Taumaranui, including Bay of Plenty, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Taihape. Scattered afternoon and evening showers, mainly inland, where some will be heavy and thundery, clearing tonight but returning tomorrow afternoon. For the remainder of the North Island, from Taranaki to Wellington, also Wairarapa, mainly fine. Isolated afternoon showers about the ranges, clearing tonight. Areas of morning cloud tomorrow, then fine. Nelson and inland Marlborough, mainly fine. Isolated showers about the ranges today. And for the remainder of the South Island, mainly fine, but areas of cloud or fog, mainly morning and evening. Isolated showers about the ranges today. And a few showers across Fiordland and coastal Southland tomorrow. And for the Chatham Islands, often cloudy. It's 6:08, and you're with John Campbell and Checkpoint.
Thank you so much, Anna. Really appreciate it. It's lots of shuffling around while you were reading the news, and I apologise, but there's lots happening. Let's go to the rescue operation at Harwood's Hole in the Abel Tasman National Park. A team of rescue specialists has reached the injured caver who fell at the 176-metre deep sinkhole this afternoon. We're just getting details on this now. We're very grateful to welcome to the phone Nelson Cave Search and Rescue Coordinator John Patterson. John, are you there?
Yes, John.
Yeah, good luck. Look, we really appreciate this because I know how busy you are. What's going on? What can you tell us about this rescue operation?
Yeah, as you mentioned, there's a doctor, a caving doctor, has rigged a rope and gone down to the injured person, and they've been assessed, and it looks, it's looking hopeful that the injury is certainly survivable, which is really good news.
It's great news. How far down are we talking?
Well, the entrance shaft is 176 metre abseil, and it appears that from the sketchy information we have so far that the person abseiling has lost control during the descent, so there was a significant amount of that pitch was done in free fall.
Okay. So the injuries are survivable, and now, of course, the issue is just getting them out, I guess.
Yes, there's a team of cavers at the cave shaft, and they're setting up a haul system. It'll be a wee while yet. There's a specialised stretcher for hauling her up in. So it'll be a wee while yet before they're ready to be hauled up, and the haul itself will probably take about an hour or so once they start.
It's good news that it's going to happen, and it's good news that the person, whatever nick they're in, is going to make it out. Thank you so much, John. We really appreciate it. That's Search and Rescue Coordinator at the scene. Lots of people contacting us about Tanya Dalton. There's not much more we can say other than the family statement. The life support for former Silver Fern Tanya Dalton has been turned off. She collapsed after suffering an aneurysm 5 days ago while playing touch rugby in Auckland. A statement from her family says life support was turned off at about 1:30 this afternoon. Her family is at her side at Auckland Hospital, and she's described as being peaceful. Test results showed the aneurysm caused massive blood loss, leading to a loss of oxygen to the brain for an extended period. The statement said the damage was irreversible, and so the family is now allowing nature to take its course. Lots and lots of people sending their love to the Dalton family. Thank you all. It's coming up to 11 minutes past 6. You're with Checkpoint. A new report shows mothers get paid 17% less than fathers. The effect of motherhood on pay report shows that gap is much larger than between men and women who are not parents, at 5%. Unions are also welcoming a move by the government that will enable employees to push ahead with pay equity claims ahead of a planned law change later this year. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
The report refers to the pay gap discrepancy as the motherhood penalty. The Equal Opportunities Commissioner Jackie Blue says it's a combination of factors.
Having career breaks means they lose experience they would otherwise have. There is a lot of discrimination and negative stereotypes about working women, that they're not, if they are mothers, or they work part-time, they're not serious about their job, or they're just simply so exhausted from being a new mother that they go to a lower level job and accept a lower paying position.
Dr Blue says public and private sector employers can take steps to close the gap.
And the first thing they do is they need to measure it. They need to measure their general female-male gender pay gap in their workforce. They can do their ethnic pay gaps, and they can absolutely should be doing this motherhood penalty gap, which shows a huge disparity.
The State Services Minister Paula Bennett, also the Minister for Women, says the gap is simply unacceptable.
My call out right now is to every employer, you don't pay them what you think you can get away with, don't even pay her what you think she'll accept. Pay her what she's worth. And if she's worth something to your business or organisation and she's productive, then why on earth should that be less than a man?
The government will preempt proposed legislation to make it easier for social workers and some in the education sector to file claims with their employers and avoid having to go to court. The Public Service Association welcomes the move, but wants to know the government will stump up with the money if the claims are successful. Mrs Bennett says the government will act in good faith.
This is one of my priorities particularly as Minister for Women and equally as State Services Minister. So I want to see us, going through this in good faith, and if it comes to us having to pay out, well, that's a process that goes through as well.
The President of the CTU, Richard Wagstaff, says there are plenty more claims in the pipeline.
If over the next 12 months more emerge, and these ones are going well, we will look to do those as well using the new principles. But it will depend on the capacity of the organisations involved, and it will depend on how we get on with the social workers and the Ministry of Education staff.
Mr Wagstaff says future claims are likely to cover workers in the care and disability sector and clerical staff. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.
Disability groups are calling for new laws that would make working, travelling and participating in society generally easier. The new Access Alliance is creating better access for 1.1 million New Zealanders with physical and mental disabilities could boost the economy by almost $900 million a year. Our reporter Eva Corlett was taken through Auckland's new Spark building to understand what sort of barriers exist.
I couldn't believe my eyes that I was expected to be a mountain goat coming up this steep street to get into the so-called accessible entrance.
That's Vivian Naylor, who is in a wheelchair inside the new Spark building on Victoria Street West. The entrance she talks about is considered the accessible one, but there is no stop-off point for cars, let alone specialised disability vehicles, and the entrance is on an incline. Those with limited mobility are faced with sweeping staircases at the primary entrance, and the only routes to other levels require opening 5 heavy doors. Ms Naylor, who specialises in barrier-free design, says building features like this are common, despite simple solutions.
It would have been so easy to have had a nice glass lift here to have brought us from this level down to that one that links up with the entry that was deemed the accessible one. It would have blended in very nicely with the general architecture of the place. When I queried it, I was told the developer didn't want to put one in because it would have cost.
CCS Disability Action has joined up with 7 organisations to form the new advocacy group Access Alliance, who are pushing for new laws to make buildings easier to use. The proposed legislation would enforce minimum standards of accessibility. Chris Orr, who is blind and is an access advisor at the Blind Foundation, says the current standards aren't compulsory, but it would be good for business if they were.
The only way it will work is if people have to do it, because they find every excuse why not to do it. It could be a heritage building, it could be, oh, it's going to be too expensive, blind people don't come here, people in wheelchairs don't come here. The reason is they can't use the building. But if we could use it, then we'd go.
Statistics New Zealand figures show that 3/4 of working-age disabled people who are unemployed would like to work. But Esther Woodbury from Disabled Persons New Zealand says not all employers are accommodating.
Some people who just want to apply for a job that they're qualified for, that they have the experience for, they can't even necessarily apply for it online because the application process isn't accessible, or some people might go to a job interview and find that they actually can't get into the building, or that the place that they would be working doesn't have an accessible bathroom.
The Alliance's report by the Institute of Economic Research says supporting disabled people could cut welfare benefit costs by $300 million a year and increase tax revenues by $387 million. It says the total economic gain would be $862 million. The chair of Be Accessible, Minnie Baragwanath, says 1 in 4 New Zealanders have a disability and nearly everyone will be temporarily disabled during their life.
The education and bringing society with you is absolutely critical, and I really believe that. I think if we can bring people's hearts and minds, then we'll be onto a real winner. It'll have an enormous positive impact for the future of New Zealand society and economy, because great access benefits everyone.
The Alliance will meet with political parties and businesses in the lead-up to the general election to discuss their recommendations. A tāmaki makaurau mo te hōtako te ahiahi, ko Eva Corlett, tēnei.
17 minutes past 6 on Checkpoint. The Prime Minister has been accused of behaving irresponsibly by spreading anecdotes about Kiwis not being able to fill jobs because they can't pass required drug tests. Bill English said yesterday he hears from employers 2 or 3 times a week that they're struggling to find enough New Zealanders to fill job vacancies, in many cases because, he says, the applicants fail the drug test. But government figures reported on Checkpoint an hour ago show beneficiaries have failed only 466 pre-employment drug tests in the past 3 years, and tens of thousands of beneficiaries have been tested in that time, perhaps as many as 90,466 failings. Today, when he was asked about his claims, Mr English denied that he's scapegoating a few drug users to try to take attention off record immigration and those workers taking jobs in New Zealand. But when asked by reporters, he wouldn't name the companies who he says have told him New Zealanders are failing drug tests.
If the criticism is that no young people take drugs and there's no such thing as drug testing that prevents them getting work, then I just think that's unrealistic.
I think it's an issue of the scale of the problem, and people are trying to work out whether you have some factual basis for that or it's entirely anecdotal, where you won't name the companies or provide any further detail.
What I described is the presence of the problem. It's one of the factors, one of the people that employers and young people have to deal with. and we have in place a comprehensive range of support services. I mean, we spend well over $100 million a year on providing drug counselling and addiction services. Now, that's quite real. I mean, these are people who turn up with drug-taking habits, and some of them are young, and we know that because we provide services to them. And the sort of assertion that somehow this doesn't exist, I think, is just unrealistic.
Well,
Bill English talking this afternoon. We've just got a breaking story out of Australia. This is just happening. A 42-year-old man has been arrested in relation to alleged terrorism offences. The arrest has taken place in the small town of Young, which is west of the capital, Canberra. Now, Australian police say the man, who has trained as an electrician, had worked to develop a long-range missile and missile capabilities, for the terrorist group IS using the internet. Here's the Australian Federal Police FP Commissioner, Andrew Coleman.
We have arrested and will charge a 42-year-old man. He will be charged with a number of offences, which include 2 serious foreign incursion offences under the Commonwealth Criminal Code, which carry a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. With these offences, we will allege that he has utilised the internet to perform services for ISIL activities in the Syria and Iraq conflict from Australia in the following ways. Firstly, by researching and designing a laser warning device to help warn against incoming guided munitions used by coalition forces in Syria and Iraq. And secondly, we will also allege that he has been researching, designing and modelling systems to assist ISIL's efforts to develop their own long-range guided missile capabilities. Now, there's a couple of important messages that I just want to leave you with. It's extremely concerning, of course, and disturbing for police that we are continuing to see Australians seeking out and providing support to these violent extremist groups. The charges we will lay today against this man are serious. However, as you've already heard from the Prime Minister and the Minister, it's important to note that we are not alleging that this man was involved in any domestic attack planning here in Australia. Unfortunately, this arrest today highlights the global nature of terrorism and the importance of community vigilance. We rely very heavily on the community to report any information to authorities, to police, to security agencies, so that we can continue to break these networks apart.
That's Australian Federal Police Commissioner Andrew Colvin. This just breaking. We don't know much more about it than what he has just said, but quite extraordinary allegations that the man was helping IS develop a laser warning device to help warn against incoming missiles, and also working to help the group design its own long-range guided missile. He was arrested just west of Canberra. It's 6:21. Over a tonne of meth was seized at our borders last year, a customs record concealed in everything from false bottom suitcases and shipping containers to car seat covers and exercise machines. 4,000 interceptions were made, according to Customs. The Drug Foundation, though, says the seizures are just the tip of the iceberg, and the problem won't stop unless the government changes tack. Sally Murphy went to Customs Auckland office to have a look at some of the seizures.
On here we have statues. This had 3 kilograms of methamphetamine. This again came through the mail centre. The statues, when they were broken open, had concrete filler in them to provide a stable base with the methamphetamine mixed into the concrete concealment.
You could mistake Customs warehouse for a toy store. A table full of Rubik's Cubes, plaster cast panda bears and checkers boards. These are just a few examples of what Customs officers are dealing with. Everyday items which are full of meth and other drugs. Customs, Bruce Berry says increased intelligence and cooperation with other countries is leading to more drugs being found.
I would like to think with the results we're getting more than we're missing. While there's a demand, there will always be drugs, and the people will continue to try. The criminal enterprises that we're dealing with are very smart, and they try their best to beat us, but our results show that we're standing up to them as well.
Mr Berry says they are seeing more finished meth in larger quantities, and small quantities coming through international mail. He says a lot of drugs are still coming from Asia, but there is an increase of meth originating from Canada, the US and Mexico.
There's not a one silver bullet that's going to stop this problem. There needs to be a range of initiatives, and I really applaud the government's approach to looking at both ends of the spectrum, stopping people getting into it, stopping it at the border, and also dealing with the effects of addiction and criminal activity as a result of it. I think when you put all of those together, that's a logical pathway. While there's a demand, there will always be a problem.
Last year's total seizure was 1.5 times larger than 2015, when 283 kilograms of meth was stopped at the borders. Drug Foundation Executive Director Ross Bell says Customs and the police are doing a better job, but meth use and seizures are growing.
And we have to know that Customs isn't catching everything that's coming in. So actually their reported seizures is the tip of the iceberg. That much bigger quantity of drugs is still coming into this country, and it will continue to do so until we get a better handle on reducing the demand for drugs.
Mr Bell says it's not a supply issue, but a demand issue.
The sooner government and opposition parties who like grandstanding on this wake up to that reality and start committing to reduce the waiting lists, get the waiting lists to zero, put more resources into prevention, then we're going to be chasing our tails. And we're still always going to be having stories about massive bust, and the market isn't going to shift because we're still seeing this from the wrong side of the equation.
Customs says the challenge facing New Zealand is meth and MDMA prices here are much higher compared to many other countries, which makes drug smuggling a lucrative business. For Checkpoint, Sally Murphy.
Time and tide are rapidly changing one of Nelson City's most valued natural assets. With the time at 6:25. The shifting sands at Tahunanui Beach are once again challenging the council to find a solution to halting the erosion and leaving locals wondering what sort of beach they might soon be left with. Here's our Nelson reporter, Tracy Neal, with the story.
The beach just minutes from central Nelson is worth millions of dollars in tourism revenue each year, according to the council. To those who enjoy an evening stroll, swim or paddle in the warm and gentle seas of Tahunanui Beach, the experience is priceless.
It's a really important part of us and our community, and I'm really proud to live here.
And it's really fun here at the beach, and the water's so warm.
That water is warm. We'd known we would have brought our togs, but we're going to come tomorrow.
The reason I came back was sort of these sort of moments and evenings where you get to bring your own child back to enjoy this beach like you remember back in the day. So
I think it's a nice beach and a safe beach.
It's an asset,
Yeah,
it's a really safe beach.
Of course it is, yeah.
It's not as good as Australia.
Ocean and estuary currents plus increasing storms from the north are taking their toll, shifting the sands back to where they were nearly 150 years ago. Nelson's Deputy Mayor Paul Matheson has lived close by for more than 30 years and has watched the beach change. He says the problem is not so much the beach itself, but the things built on or near it.
For example, the motor camp is at a lower level than that beach, and if at any stage it breached, and there's always that possibility with this sort of turbine going round and around and round, if it breached, it would head towards the Tahuna Beach Holiday Park.
The Nelson Golf Club and airport right next door are also bounded by the sea that's nibbling away at their edges. Holiday Park manager Marcel Feck says there's been noticeable change in the 2 years he's been there.
So we've seen quite a bit of change there, where there was a bit of a sand spit with some growth on it, and the sea's kind of changed things around, and that sand spit's now gone. So we're kind of backing straight onto the Tasman Bay now.
Marcel Fex reckons a specially built rock wall built near the camp some time ago is doing a good job of slowing the erosion. And Paul Matheson says the council has included erosion control in a wider management plan for Tahunanui Beach and Reserve.
And we've done a lot around of replanting all the dunes, but that very pointed part of the back beach, that corner, is a problem. And yet we're looking at it and saying if it continues at that rate, we need to be acting.
Nelson geologist Mike Johnston says mitigation is a delicate balance of making sure that fixing one problem doesn't create another. He says 2 large sand spits being pushed further out to sea past the beach could soon collapse.
Doing any engineering works around the beach could precipitate the collapse of those 2 big spits which go well out almost opposite Aldershore Island. They're going to collapse sooner or later, which is going to shift a lot of sand.
Another Nelson geologist, Murray McClintock, says any beach, reef or sand spit is a dynamic environment, but the biggest concern is whether things are changing faster than they were.
One of the big overprints we're going to see in all coastal environments is the impact of sea level rise. That's already happening and will continue to accelerate. So we also need to ask ourselves, what are we trying to preserve? We may be trying to hold back sea level change.
And that, says Murray McClintock, would be like trying to harness the moon. In Nelson for Checkpoint, Tracy Neal.
Tracy Neal, who was also at the caves, where they are getting that injured caver out. The injuries that he or she has sustained are survivable, and they are about to begin the extraordinary task of getting them up that 176-metre ascent. So much feedback coming in tonight. Here's some. John from Christine Dan. In 1965, when I was 13, I was able to swim safely and happily in the water of the Selwyn River at Coast Ford, close to Lincoln. 30 years later, when I enrolled for my PhD, Research in Environmental Policy at Lincoln University, the sign saying it was unsafe to swim had been up for years, and they're still there now. Fast forward another 30 years to 2025, I'll be 73 and still not able to trust the water in the Selwyn. By 2045, best case scenario, I might be able to swim there, but more likely I'll be dead. And I'm one of the lucky generation who got to swim in a lowland river in my childhood. I feel so sick and angry about the theft of their natural birthright that generations of New Zealanders have had visited on them by a succession of governments that couldn't care less. Thank you, Christine. Lots of people saying that kind of stuff tonight. We're out of time, but we really appreciate your feedback. We'll be back tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The life support for former Silver Fern Tanya Dalton has been turned off. A caver with moderate injuries from a fall at Harwood's Hole inside Takaka Hill should be lifted out after 7. Employers are being urged to close the gender pay gap, particularly the 17% for working mothers. It's been calculated getting disabled people into work could cut benefit costs by $300 million a year. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Now I'm listening to Kanye on the Taconic Park.
Dirty Projectors is an American indie band that might be bridging the divide between hip-hop and indie rock. I'm Nick Bollinger and I'll be reviewing their new self-titled album in the sampler. I'll be discussing the Cretan rock fusion